All right, today I want to talk about something I've been seeing a lot on the internet recently, and that's just that everybody is struggling. This is just not what I envisioned adulthood would be like. And I'd like to consider myself to be relatively responsible, and I am somewhat financially literate now, but I definitely wasn't in my early adulthood. So I've definitely made my fair share of mistakes early on, and I've since tried to course correct. But it's still hard, man. Like, I don't know if you guys could tell, but this is actually a container house, and we got this because this is all that my fiance and I could afford right now. And even this is still, I guess, a luxury in a sense because we're only able to get this because my dad owns some land, and so I was able to put this unit on the land. And if it wasn't for this, then I'd be paying at the bare minimum double what we're paying now for rent for a similarly sized house or apartment somewhere. And this is out in the boonies. Like, I'm in California, but I'm about an hour and a half from the LA area. So I'm not in a major city by any means. And it's just crazy how expensive things have gotten, especially rent. When we moved here, actually, I stayed with my cousin for a couple days, and he has an apartment somewhat close to the LA area, and he was paying $2,000 a month for an apartment that was a little bit more than half this size. Man, it's just crazy thinking about that, like the standards of what we expect to get for the amount of money and time that we put into things. And I get it, like a lot of people are going to argue that you just need to be better with your spending, and yes, I think that there are people out there who make more than enough money or who put themselves in very bad financial positions because they own like a Camaro or they buy Louis Vuitton belts every other week. I know those people exist, but I think the vast majority of us are living relatively reasonable lives, and I get all my groceries from Walmart. I don't own a Louis, Gucci, nothing. Yeah, my fiance and I are very low maintenance. We rarely even eat out in terms of fast food or just ordering food out. And we don't do any crazy events. We're not going to parties and concerts and whatever every weekend. We don't drink. I say this still from a privileged position to be 26 and have my own space, and I guess be able to still survive and make it month to month. And I don't want to act like I'm completely poor, but it's definitely not easy, and I'm not as comfortable as I would like to be, definitely. And this still affects like other life decisions, and I do feel like I have to be a bit more restrictive than I should be about certain things, like for example just going out more and experiencing life really. And something like going on a day trip to San Diego so we can go visit the zoo is something that like we have to budget for and plan. And I don't want to say that like everybody should be able to do that on a whim, just on a moment's notice, but I do think that it's crazy when we've gotten to the point where something like that is like a it's seen as like a very luxury experience almost, or like, but it's just almost like a lavish event, or that's something that you look forward to. And it is fun. It's supposed to be like an enjoyable experience. I get that, but I just feel like that is not a high bar for a nice outing or a nice experience. I feel like that's reasonable. But yeah, even something like me living in this house and it being half the rent that I'll pay anywhere else, it still came with a lot of issues. There was a lot of infrastructure things that I had to pay for in cash basically to get installed, to do like, piping, plumbing, make sure the electrical was set up. It does run on solar power, so that's cool. I save a lot on electricity, but I still have to budget my electricity because it's all the power is stored in a battery, so I'm limited with the amount of power I can use throughout the day, which is typically not an issue except for during the winter. And we ran into a very huge issue, which is that we couldn't use the heater in the winter because the battery would die in a couple hours. And so I eventually had to get a pellet heater, and that had to pay a couple thousand for the heater itself and the installation. That was a whole process. But I remember before that, when I was saving up to be able to afford the pellet heater, there was just so many days it was freezing in here. It was 40 something degrees, and I was literally laying in bed, like shivering, like my joints and everything hurt. Uh, I work from home, so I'm working off of a laptop, and I'm sitting here freezing. My fingers are going stiff. They're going numb while I'm trying to type and send emails and stuff. And it was just a horrible experience for a couple months. And I'm glad we got through that. But man, it was extremely stressful. And so, yes, I have the luxury of being able to say that I have my own space, but it has not come without its costs for sure. And it's been a lot. It's been pretty hectic. And it's relatively stable now, and obviously it's warmer outside. The weather and the conditions are just better. But yeah, just even before that, when I was still living in the house with my parents, that came with its own issues as well. And just dealing with my parents and my nephews who my parents are adopting, and trying to work, and my nephew's barging into the room while I'm on the phone with a customer or something. Just so many things that have happened in the last couple years, and it's just kind of hit me like a brick wall. Like, this is what adulthood is like. And it's not to say that I'm not grateful for my childhood and that my parents didn't do their best to allow me to enjoy it, but a lot of other things kind of got in the way from me enjoying my childhood. And I thought that adulthood would be just freedom, and I could basically do whatever I wanted outside of work as long as I was relatively responsible with money and not buying Lamborghinis. But I'm far from being able to buy a Lamborghini, and I still can't do whatever I want. I think this is a common experience if you're not somebody who's making an exorbitant amount of money, which I know those people are few and far between. I think that most of us are living like this, and a lot of people are living in even worse conditions than me, or just under more financial stress than I am. And I can only imagine what their lives are like. And I just have a better perspective of what stress does to people. And I used to think, yeah, I used to think that people were just lazy, or that they just make bad decisions, which I guess you could argue is still true. But I don't think people recognize how much that stress and circumstances and just life bearing down on people causes them or influences them to make worse decisions than they could if they were of a clear mind and didn't just have this looming fog and stress just constantly hovering over them, or just being in the back of their mind. And I'm in a much better position now mentally than I was about a year ago. But I do remember that feeling of the constant chaos of balancing so many different emotions, and feeling the pressure to perform at work, but also wanting my own space, but also trying to save money, and also balancing wanting to actually go out and have experiences and live life. And so there's just so many conflicting things that it feels like it's hard to find this balance with. And I think that a lot of people are just looking for just, I guess, a little bit of a relief, a little bit of breathing room, just I think it's hard for to plan for your future when you're worried about tomorrow. And for a long time, I've been just trying to get by day to day, and having that flexibility or mental capacity to be able to look on a bit further than that has given me some perspective, and allowed me to just think about how much stress and life circumstances affects the decisions you make, and your just clarity of mind, and how well you can think and process things. Hopefully something I said resonates with somebody. If not, y'all let me know that I was just yapping about nothing. Until next time.